4 p.m. on the West Coast, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, live with Nat and the Guy.
Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And today we're going to talk about the debate coming up with J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. Also, we have economic guru Dave Ramsey, who offered to interview Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump. One accepted, one didn't. We'll get into the details of that.
And then Netflix's CEO had the great idea of endorsing Kamala, and now their shares are tanking. Of course they are.
And also doing the Biden, Japanese president, Canadian president, and the German leader, all under pressure to do what Biden did and resign.
And then with the dock workers and the strikes at the eastern ports, well, there still doesn't seem to be any sort of agreement. So we'll see what the Biden administration decides to do. But as of right now, it looks like they will actually allow the strike to go on right before, like 5 weeks before the election.
And the Babylon Bee sues California over satire and parody over their deepfake laws. Okay, let's get into the J.D. Vance, Tim Walz debate.
Sure. So the debate will be tomorrow, October 1st, depending on where you're located. Depends on what times that will be. But, I mean, it's going to be interesting because both of them are, longtime politicians and debaters. And J.D. Vance, I mean, he's a lawyer, so it's going to be a very interesting time to see what happens.
Well, I think J.D. Vance is going to want to highlight two things. That's the hillbilly eulogy. Was that what it was called?
No.
Elegy.
Hillbilly elegy. Is what you say when someone dies.
That's a movie that was made about him, as well as a book. So if we can reintroduce that to the moderate public that maybe doesn't know who he is, it paints him in a very good light. And also, he's going to want to really hit Tim Walz with, I think, the Tampon Tim name. At least I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and Walz will, I think once again do his doddering, I'm a white guy show. I'm the man that's going to be behind the first black female president, and not much else.
The problem you're going to have with Tim Walz is he's been caught in so many lies. J.D. Vance is going to be able to highlight that, and him and Kamala Harris have extreme left-wing policies that they really don't want to highlight. That's why they're kind of using broad terms and definitions to describe what they're doing, like their economy. So I don't think he's going to want to go into details, and if he does go into details, he's going to have to lie. Also, a lot of Harris's and Walz's good policies are just direct imitation of Donald Trump. And if J.D. Vance can point that out, that'll be a good look for him, I think.
And then the debate is going to be 90 minutes, so that's going to be interesting.
That's quite long.
I think both of them will be able to talk for that long, which, I mean, we saw Kamala can't, unless she's, given the questions and answers beforehand. But they'll also have no audience, which is something that has been happening throughout most of these debates for a while now, which I think the audience actually brings in an interesting, extra layer of almost truth verification. Because, I mean, if there was an audience last time Trump was on the debate, well, maybe somebody could have at least tried to yell out like, hey, also fact check Kamala, please.
Yeah, the issue you're going to have with J.D. Vance is he has been using all these rallies as trial runs to take hard questions from liberal media. And he's been going on interviews with liberal media. So he's been using his time with the media, specifically the liberal media, to prepare for this debate. Tim Walz has been avoiding interviews. And when he does do interviews, they're softball interviews with friendly hosts. So J.D. Vance, I expect to be really prepared. I expect him to be hard-nosed and really go at Walz. We'll see how Walz responds to that. But let's get into the next story. Dave Ramsey's a lot better than I do. I was surprised you knew who he was with the story.
Yeah, so I love Dave Ramsey. He does the Ramsey show.
Whoa. I thought you loved me.
I do love you.
Okay.
But in a metaphorical...
metaphorically.
In a platonic way. I love Dave Ramsey. He's a financial advisor, financial guru. He actually built his whole, career and show, and now multiple shows with multiple personalities, like people that talk, not that he has multiple personalities. Telling people how to better manage their finances, and especially in the US, that is essentially beholden to credit card and debts, and that's how that economy runs. Well, he tells almost everybody, like, hey, you don't need a credit card. The best way to, keep your finances stable is to not owe anything to anyone. And he actually personally has helped me, and I now abhor credit cards because I think that they're just a giant scam. And he's very smart, and okay, well,
let's go into the article. Enough of Dave Ramsey's.
Well, if you can watch his show, it's really funny. People call in and ask him things about their problems.
Okay, let's go into the article.
It's very interesting. Economic guru Dave Ramsey asked both Trump and Kamala for an interview. Here's what happened. So the Harris's team has yet to accept the offer. A political money expert, which, I mean, if you watched his show, you kind of know where he lands on. But Dave Ramsey said he asked both former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris for a sit-down interview, but so far, only Trump has agreed to the discussion, while Harris's team sits on the request. And apparently several weeks ago, Ramsey's team reached out to both of them to sit down and discuss ideas and talk about, the people's finances, not just the economic politics in general. And the Harris camp, he says the Harris camp has their request, and last time they spoke about it, it was still under review. It's not a yes, it's not a no, but she hasn't really said anything. And Trump did say yes, and in fact, he already has interviewed him at Trump Tower, and it's already been said and done with. So, I mean, we can see where their priorities lie, because Kamala is very... not Kamala, Trump is very intent to speak with and for the people, and so is Dave Ramsey. So it's not a surprise that Kamala doesn't really want to do it.
Trump will speak with anybody, anywhere, anytime, and that's just been his policy for this whole thing. Now, I understand Kamala Harris can pick and choose who she wants to do, but Dave Ramsey is pretty big in the moderate and independent space, and he has a non-political crowd somewhat. So this would be the perfect audience for her to try to appeal to. Problem is, she recently went on the podcast with 2 NBA players, and she made a fool of herself. If you look at the comment section in that, they just roasted those NBA players for the way they edited it, because he was rolling his eyes at one point, and then they cut to him smiling.
Yeah, if you want to watch it, it's called All the Smoke.
All the Smoke.
Podcast.
We do have the Dave Ramsey's clip, though. Why don't we play that for them?
Sure.
And it kind of just repeats what you've already said, but...
I love when he talks. He's just funny.
Why do you love when I talk?
I know. That's why I'm sitting here.
Oh, okay.
I had an unusual thing happen. Our team several weeks ago reached out to the Trump organization and reached out to the Harris organization, Vice President Harris, President Donald Trump, and offered the ability to sit down and have a discussion about ideas. Because I'm sick and tired of all the mudslinging, I'd like to talk about ideas, because I think ideas are worth fighting over and arguing about. And if you want to sit down and talk about ideas and do a long-form interview, the Harris camp has our request. The last word we got was under review. So not been a yes, not been a no from them. But I flew to New York, and at this time yesterday, I was in Trump Tower interviewing President Donald Trump for an hour, or for 35 minutes anyway, ended up being. Went a little quicker than we thought it was going to go. So our first question, I'll go ahead and preview it. I just said, okay, Mr. President, we talk to real people every day. Let me tell you what they're concerned about. They're not concerned about a bunch of the stuff you're talking about. The stuff they're concerned about, $7 eggs, $5 gas, 7% interest rates, and house prices going up faster than their wages are going up. This black cloud that's over our economic situation right now. And we can talk about how it got there. We can talk about what you used to do. You can talk about the current administration, but I don't really want to. What I want to talk about is what you're going to do in the first 90 days to get this black cloud off of America.
Right.
And that was my first question. Yeah. So, and I'll ask Vice President Harris this exact same question if I get the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would say Donald Trump's response to that's most likely going to be drill, baby, drill. That's going to bring down the prices of gas from $5 a gallon to a reasonable amount. And then after that, if you're drilling for a lot of oil, the main cost effect that goes into food is the transportation of food. So if he can bring oil costs down by drilling in Alaska and drilling in a lot of other places, this is going to bring food and all kinds of other internal costs down. So I think just that one simple answer of drill, baby, drill, which I would expect to be his answer because he's been asked that question before, would explain exactly how you're going to bring down the costs. And then when you ask Harris a similar question, she gives platitudes and she's not very specific. She says, I want to give you $50,000 for a house or $6,000 for a business or whatever it is. But she has it doesn't really make sense. And especially doesn't appeal to common sense. Common sense says if you drill, food prices are to come down because the major input to food costs are oil and gas.
And I think, again, Kamala will probably just respond with, I was raised in a middle-class suburb where we really cared about our lawns. And I mean, it's just the same answer over and over again. And I think she's afraid to speak about the real people and only wants to give these broad economic platitudes, because she knows that the reason why there's a black cloud over America and a lot of other countries as well is because of her administration and the Bidenomics that they decided to employ.
Well, I don't even think she's going to do the interview, to be honest with you. She's like, she wants these most softball interviewers and the most softball interview questions. She usually wants to be allowed to have the questions. This is the problem with JD Vance and Trump. They're just doing hundreds of interviews, and Kamala Harris and Waltz are doing like a dozen interviews. And then on top of that, Trump and JD Vance are doing a ton of rallies. So between the rallies, between the interviews, they're like well-spoken out there. And then they have their A-team of X-Men, which is RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, and the whole bunch of them just crisscrossing the United States, talking about what their exact policies are going to be, exactly how are they going to take apart these different deep state entities like the FBI, who are they going to use to replace it? I had a story this morning about Alex Jones and how he has to sell off his company, but it looks like there may be Republican investors coming in to actually buy his company, keep him on, and keep his voice in the mainstream.
Yeah, and I mean, in comparison, Kamala the only reason probably why she did this terrible podcast, the All the Smoke one, was because JD Vance and Trump had been going all over the place, talking to anybody that'll have them. I mean, I'm still holding out for a Joe Rogan interview, but I mean, that one's probably coming pretty soon.
Well, I would call it an October surprise, but I think we already all expect it, so it's not going to be much of a surprise. Let's get into the next story, which is doing the Biden. It's the Japanese leader, the Canadian leader, and the German leader all being pressured to step down and resign, much like Biden did. They're telling these leaders they would be doing a service to the party and a service to the democratic ideals if they step down. Now, Trudeau's dead in the water for his next election, but why don't you go over the article just a little bit? It's a long article, so just...
Sure. So facing looming national elections, Japan's Fumio Kishida, Canada's Justin Trudeau, and Germany's Olaf Scholz have all faced calls to follow in the U.S. president's footsteps. When he exited Joe Biden the presidential race to make way for Kamala Harris this summer, he knew his decision would be closely watched around the world. He didn't realize that it would make doing a Biden the new political shorthand for an embattled national leader who sees the writing on the wall and steps aside for others within his party, or the move's ripple effect, setting an example for those within democracies closely tied to the United States to pressure their own leaders to step down. At least 3 unpopular leaders facing looming national elections, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, have felt pressure themselves in the 2 months since Biden bowed out. And a lot of people are questioning why nobody else has, stepped down.
I think a lot of people, the general populace right now, are feeling like lab rats. You're having corporations and the mainstream media, as well as academia through psychologists and marketing experts, all really trying to figure out how they want to get the populace to do what they want to do and adopt crazy ideas such as there is no man, there is no woman, just take a bunch of drugs, rather watching after your health, just eat the bugs, eat the food. Like, it's just absolutely crazy what they're trying to get people to do. It's like a lab experiment. It's like a huge psyop how liberals are treating the general population right now. And that's why populism is on the rise, and politicians like Donald Trump and JD Vance that are speaking directly to you with common sense approaches and just being transparent and honest about what they want to do. Even if drill baby drill is a bad idea, he's going to tell you, we're going to drill and this is going to be the effect for you. So it's just common sense ideas that are really simple to break down, and there's not a bunch of big marketing scheme behind it. A matter of fact, it's a lot of people just like us and just like you and people making videos that aren't making any money off of it, that just want to inform the general public of what's really going on and to try to get these people to stop treating us like lab rats, stop running the psyop on us.
And I mean, we've seen it's not just JD Vance and Donald Trump.
No,
I mean, it's Pierre Poilievre in Canada and a lot of the right-wing scary politicians that are actually now winning in a lot of Europe, and some in Latin America, Javier Milei, and
there was another European populist that just won that they're calling right-wing again. So Like they just keep
it's
winning.
So it's not just Donald Trump and JD Vance, and that's why probably we keep seeing this ripple effect of doing a Biden and like new like presidents that have been there or prime ministers or whoever that has been there for a long time and just essentially ruining everything because they follow the steps that they've been given. Probably, or because they want to be a global community of some sort.
Well,
it's not working out. And we're seeing it not just in the States, not just in Canada, but everywhere. And here in Mexico, tomorrow, the new president is getting installed. And that's going to be interesting because if Justin Trudeau finally gets out of office, and then if Trump gets in, she'll be the only progressive left wing in the top of the continent.
Well,
and then
like we said,
Latin America's also like all the bottom parts are also changing in the continent. So, and
like we said, with doing the Biden, it seems like all these left-wing politicians, all these globalists are being pressured to step down because they don't know what to do with this Trump-like populist movement. And when I say Trump-like populist movement, I mean, this is just basic ideals of populism that are spreading around the globe, and right-wing politicians and libertarian politicians are taking advantage of this and really talking directly to the people.
Well, it's not even populism. It's literal common sense and wanting to go against.
But that's what the populace wants right now. So that is populism right now.
Populism doesn't have a real definition. But I mean, it doesn't even have to be someone populist. It's the returning to common sense, because some of these people that a lot of people are rallying behind maybe don't have all the same ideals, but at least they're trying to fight against all of the ideological complex that has been built around all of the current political actors that we see, and even the non-political ones. So all the NGOs,
I don't know, because a lot of
the efforts that have been made.
A lot of these globalist ideals were populist ideals when they first came up. The clean up the environment, to drill less, all this stuff. It really, and all ended up being a lie, especially when they started manipulating statistics and things like this to really try to trick the general public into it. And when you could really see that this was just a string of lies to get power over the general populist, the left-wing populist ideals kind of fell apart, and this new right-wing common sense populist is really what's coming up.
Sure.
Okay, let's go on to the next story.
Speaking of common sense, showing a smidgen of the people the truth, well, Netflix cancellation surged after co-founder endorsed Kamala Harris.
This is Reed Harris.
Reed Hastings also gave millions of dollars to a super PAC backing Harris. And the cancellations have skyrocketed after he decided to endorse Kamala Harris in July. And Bloomberg News reported the cancellations tripled after Hastings made the announcement and donated $7 million to a super PAC backing her campaign. After the depressing debate, we are in the game again, Hastings said in an interview. He later added on X, "Congrats to Kamala Harris. Now it's time to win," even though they are not. Subscribers were already canceling their plans en masse in July after the streaming service killed off its lowest tier subscription package. But the week after Hastings made his endorsement, cancellations spiked to levels that were unusual even for July, the report said. And there's a whole hashtag thing going on in hashtag cancel Netflix. It's trending. It's been trending for days. So,
well, I would say that it's interesting because all these streaming services are like really invested in this DEI and ESG, and none of them have really gone the other way. Smaller streaming platforms like the Daily Wire, but it's not as mainstream as Netflix or Amazon or Apple. Nobody's really picked up on the populist ideals or just the conservative regular people ideals. Quit putting politics in our face. And I think who's going to benefit off this the most is actually YouTube, because these people are canceling their memberships, but they don't seem to be picking up memberships other places. And I think YouTube's really the big beneficiary of this. People are searching what they want, where they want, and when they want. And I'm really hopefully Rumble gets some of that rub. Now, Rumble doesn't get as much because they're a free speech political platform for the most part. YouTube really has a lot of educational videos and just mainstream, anything you want to search like Google, you would type into YouTube and you're going to get a video. On Rumble, it's not quite as streamlined yet, but I do like Rumble a lot.
And TikTok as well, but I mean, I'm saying TikTok will also see a surge, I'm guessing, and short form content in general, but with the whole Hastings endorsement, people endorsing Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, we've talked about this before. I don't think celebrity or who's ever endorsements actually work. And even by donating that much money, $7 million to a super PAC, or all of the tech firms actually donating to the Democrats, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. I mean, Donald Trump's campaign is way smaller, even though he's getting an injection of money from Truth Social in October, so soon. But I don't think the endorsements, I don't think the donations really make a difference. It's right now who's talking to and for the people, who's saying common sense things, and who has been sitting at the White House for 3 years doing nothing.
Well, the YouTube model, and we'll say the YouTube model because it applies to TikTok and Rumble as well, but the YouTube model is much more versatile than Netflix or these other streaming platforms. These streaming platforms are expecting you to invest a minimum of half an hour if you watch a short show, or an hour and a half with a long show. People are having much shorter attention spans, so they're coming to these streaming services like YouTube and Rumble, and they have shorts. They have short videos of 5 to 10 minutes. You can actually pick what you want to watch and the length of time, and then they're able to get content creators to make longer form content if that becomes applicable by putting benefits into the algorithm. So then they can get content creators to make either longer or shorter form content depending on what the needs of the public is at the time. The Netflix model is giving you these sit times and these sit durations where you're gonna have to sit down for a long time. And if you don't like something, then you've just wasted your hour and a half. But with YouTube, before I watch an hour and a half of content from somebody like a long form podcast, I'm usually watching a lot of shorter clips, like 5 to 10 minutes. So I know that investment of my hour and a half is gonna pay off.
And I was also seeing that a lot of TikTok creators, because another, I mean, somewhere else they could go and somewhere they have been going, because as you mentioned, we don't see people going to different streaming services, and actually the whole streaming complex kind of messed themselves over because they subdivided and divided even more, and now there's too much choice, but they all cost kind of the same, so you don't want to end up having to pay exorbitant amounts. You're essentially paying a cable package again. But TikTok, I was hearing, at least for now, that a lot of creators are actually not that happy with TikTok anymore because of the TikTok shop and the way that TikTok has been handling their creators, giving them less money. So this might actually signal that YouTube, as you were saying, might actually get even bigger and more bloated because a lot of people are kind of starting to get done with TikTok.
Yeah,
and it might get banned.
As much as I don't like YouTube for a lot of the algorithm when it comes to politics and the censorship, they really have streamlined the way they do things and the way their algorithm works, and everything just works seamlessly. When I go over to Rumble, there's a lot of things that I just want them to improve because I wish I can go over to Rumble, but they really have a problem of pushing new creators and building them up. YouTube really gives you just enough incentive as you make each video to grow with the platform, which I really do like, even though I like the free speech method that Rumble has.
But I mean, it's also a matter of people not wanting. So you could, hang in there and keep using Rumble, and eventually enough people will get convinced to use it, and then they get the budget, and then they can actually do things because they have the proof of concept, which I think they're still basically working on the proof of concept. The problem is nobody has fully no user has fully, moved over to Rumble. Well, some of the issues.
A lot of them did because they were getting big contracts, 2-year contracts.
No, I mean the users, the people that watch.
But a lot of the users did transfer over because they were giving out big contracts to the creators. But this was a 2-year strategy by Rumble where they give all these creators these contracts, and now they're running out. These contracts are, so they weren't planning to renew them long term. So now a lot of these content creators are going back to YouTube. I think the good strategy for a lot of content creators is putting the main show on YouTube so they can get that monetization, and then finishing the show off on the more politically touchy subjects on Rumble and on locals. What they've been doing. And that's what they've been doing, which is good.
But it hasn't translated into people starting to watch on Rumble. So I think that's their main, sticking point right now. I mean, we have all of our
But
stuff.
it is growing, and I do like it. And the one person that did recognize us when we went to the protest did see us on Rumble, so...
Yes.
Thank you for that. I would say, as far as streaming services go, like the mainstream movie streaming sites, I think there's going to be a consolidation over the next few years, and I really do expect Apple to come in and buy Disney.
No, I think most of them are going to end up in Apple. It's going to end up the way it was.
I think it's going to end up with Netflix and Apple battling out, and it's going to be two.
Because Apple already had HBO before they decided to split off, and then Hulu has Disney, and Disney's very connected with Apple, and Disney's not doing so well either. I mean, a lot of streaming services are failing, but the ones that have fully embraced DEI, critical race theory, the ideology, they're the ones that are doing the worst.
Well, and I don't know what's going to happen with Amazon. I really think Amazon will just end up hanging out there. They are making good content and investing a lot of money. But the great thing is when you have an Amazon Prime subscription, it automatically gives you the Amazon. Mm-hmm. So they have an automatic huge base of users. And if you already have an Amazon subscription through Amazon Prime, then why do you need another subscription service?
Yeah.
You really don't. Plus, you're getting the free delivery on a lot of your products. So it's a really good model that Amazon has created. But
and I mean, if you have Disney, as we saw recently, the husband of a lady, actually, just because he said yes to the terms and services on Disney Plus, Disney was saying that he wasn't able to sue after his wife passed away from having consumed things that she was allergic to at Disney Springs.
Well,
and the whole argument from Disney's lawyers was, well, you signed up for a free trial of Disney Plus and you signed our terms and conditions. And in there, we said that you can't sue us. So because you already signed, then you can't sue us. So,
yeah, I don't know what Disney's doing, but I think they're intentionally collapsing their stock price over these last few years. So a big buyer can come in and it's going to be an American buyer like Apple. Yeah, I keep saying it, but
unless they fully sell.
Unless Elon Musk comes in. And I think even if Apple comes in, if they can get an Elon Musk type figure to come in there that can just chop heads and then rehire whoever they need. And
well, there wasn't Elon Musk. What was the name of that guy that was trying to
Nelson Peltz?
Tank it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're going to come. They may come in together.
But I think he's going to be the main figure, not Elon. Elon has too much going on, and
I don't know. I would say you bring Elon in for 6 to 12 months, clean the company up, and then Peltz takes over from there. That would be great.
They wouldn't let him come in.
I think they would.
No, they
because
wouldn't.
It makes a statement to the general public that's going to make the stock price go way up because they know exactly what Elon Musk is known for, and that's cutting the fat off companies and making them extremely lean and
but
run
X
good.
isn't doing super well either.
X is the main news platform.
But it's not doing so well financially.
It is doing well.
No,
we'll agree to disagree on that one.
It's not doing as well as it had done once. Not that I don't like it.
It was doing better.
Not that I don't like Elon.
It's doing better now than it was with Twitter.
At the end, yeah, but not in the heyday of Twitter.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree. We'll bring up an article and then we'll debate it one day.
Sure.
Okay.
So the Babylon Bee is suing Gavin Newsom because he has no idea how anything works or that there are things called jokes that people make sometimes. So the Babylon Bee sues California over new laws cracking down on satire. The Babylon Bee, a website that skewers liberals, filed a lawsuit Monday challenging California's new anti-satire laws, saying Governor Gavin Newsom is trying to take the fun out of politics. One law forbids posting or sharing online deceptive content that harms a candidate's electoral prospects ahead of an election, while another prods social media companies to police their platforms for anything that would run afoul of the new standard. Sorry, my voice. Those who want to practice political satire, an era where the Babylon Bee has a few rivals, must attach a sort of product warning label, which the Bee says effectively destroys the point of the satire. So, I mean, the Babylon Bee, in case you don't know, is a satire website. They make a lot of memes and jokes and essentially publish headlines that sound crazy. And then 2 to 3 years later, the real headline will actually come out because that's the world we live in now.
Well, I think this has a lot to do with free speech. And if you let them start censoring satire and parody, then they're going to come after other forms of speech. You really got to keep as much free speech in the public sector, especially in America, where they have, as the First Amendment, free speech protections. The fact that California is coming after the Babylon Bee and parody. And this was Gavin Newsom that is coming after this and was signing these bills right after he put a tweet out because of the parody that came out about Kamala Harris. They said they need to make these types of parody illegal. And this is really the Democrats just getting hurt because if it was parody about Donald Trump, they wouldn't be passing these bills. It's because they're coming after Kamala Harris.
Yeah, well, they were jumping up and down with all of the Trump assassination attempts and saying, oh, you shouldn't have missed. I mean, come on. But I mean, it's clear that Gavin Newsom is doing this as a way to prep for, in 4 years when he runs. He doesn't want to be made fun of, probably. I mean, otherwise, why would he specifically be targeting just elections and political candidates. And yes, we've seen what happens when a political candidate is so bad that you can make so much satire and say so many things about them. And we've had it twice now, with Biden and now Kamala Harris. I mean, they're both just ripe for satire and comedy.
Well, it's like when you come after guns, you come after, just these guns, and then these guns, and then more and more and more until, you've de-armed the population. And that's exactly what they're trying to do with free speech. They're coming after just this speech, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then all your free speech is gone, and then you're not allowed to say anything. You just have to sit there and eat the bugs.
Yeah, well, it's hate speech. Same thing, that's what happens with taxes, but it started with hate speech, and now someone that doesn't feel so good about something you said about them, so now they have a right to go after you, as we see in Canada, where you essentially can't say anything because you'll be taken in front of the Human Rights Tribunal and then maybe even jailed. Then the pronouns, and then the fact that now they're going after jokes and satire and AI, also AI generated stuff, is insane, because we know where this is going to lead. And the fact that people are cheering it on makes me realize that they haven't really thought about the consequences for them, because yes, right now it's a law that you want passed, but what happens if the opposing team gets in and then starts actually implementing them against you? I think that's what most people don't understand. Like, when laws get passed, it's not just against the people you want them passed, it's for everybody, and it depends on who's at the top, how those laws get actually instituted. So
that you just brought up a good point, and that was going back to Canada. Canada is really the test ground for a lot of these freedom infringements. Now, what they've done in Canada, they have a lot of speech outlawed there. So hate speech is a crime. So if you say hateful things, then you can be arrested. And this is absolutely crazy. If you don't use somebody's pronouns, if somebody's obviously it's just insane what's going on there and the arrests that they're making of people. But I watched today where there's this big thing known as the mass grave hoax, where these native tribes were saying there was all these bodies of children that were buried, and they uncovered them, and the media backed up the lie somehow and repeated these lies over and over and over. So a lot of people in Canada that live in the country and worldwide actually believe there's all these dead bodies, and that the Canadian government was involved in some kind of mass genocide. And today they're trying to pass a speech law saying you're not allowed to call these mass grave hoaxes a hoax, that is hate speech. So you're going to call something hate speech that was actually real?
Yeah, and just to clarify, what the mass grave hoax is, this has to do with residential schools about 100 years ago, where they took Indigenous children and started re-educating them, and then apparently they found a bunch of graves, but they never actually did the forensic investigation into the sites where they were saying there were all these essentially dead, buried children from 100 years ago.
And they're refusing to dig.
They keep refusing to dig, but they also have done scans where there has been some evidence that there's really nothing there, number one. And number two, some of them were just regular graveyards, but because they used to use, wooden crosses, and there wasn't that good record keeping back then, it's just normal,
also,
the town's graveyard instead of this horrible thing, which now they had to go give reparations to the Indigenous people. They got a whole day about it.
Well, they justified burning down
First Nations people. Sorry, I don't want to get arrested. They've
justified burning down hundreds of churches across Canada as retribution, and Justin Trudeau doesn't want to say anything about that. The other thing is, this is absolutely insane, because people have made multiple documentaries about this fact and this mass grave hoax, obviously debunking the entire thing. But if this law was passed, you're not going to be able to make documentaries like that, because that documentary itself would be considered hate speech and you would be arrested, much how the gentleman in the UK has been arrested for his documentary.
Yes,
Tommy Robinson.
I didn't know which gentleman you were referring to. There's been a few that have been arrested just for speaking out or just for making...
Let's go into the last story here, which is an update on the port strike.
Workers, yeah.
Well, let's play the video first, because this is pretty interesting. And this is going to be Biden and Harris's Commerce Secretary. And let's see what she has to say.
Where have you been kind of focused and hearing on what would happen if the strike goes, let's say, longer than a week?
Again, I have not been very focused on that.
Where have you been kind of focused? And
that's literally the clip, because it's so egregious that she had really she can't say anything, even though the dog worker strike is one of the most important things that it could be happening, especially for the Biden administration right before the elections, if they even want to try to get Harris elected. Why? Because I mean, the ports are where all the shipments come in. Do you know how many imports and exports go through the United States on the eastern side just on an hourly basis? Imagine now that the fuel, food, products, shipments from people's, businesses, everything gets stalled. And they have until midnight today to come to an agreement or to try to halt the strike. But if, the secretary herself is saying that it hasn't really been on her mind, they already have the hurricanes and all the other natural disasters going on that have already halted the shipments going in and out, not just in the States, but everywhere else as well. Imagine now what would happen if they actually decide to close the eastern ports, which is one of the largest sectors of shipping in the world, I'm guessing, other than China.
Yeah, like this is absolutely insane. The fact that she doesn't care about the port, she's going to care about these ports come tomorrow night. And these dock workers are going to either get the best deal of their life, or Biden's going to have to make the call to send them back to work forcefully. Biden has the power to, with the stroke of his pen, make these dock workers go back to work for another 80 days. Now, we reported last week that he may be a little bit upset how he was ousted from the Democratic Party, and this is why he may not sign that. And this is going to put the Harris administration in quite deep water, I would say. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, well, not administration, but campaign. Hopefully, never administration.
But going back to the earlier story with Dave Ramsey, he was like, people don't care about what you're talking about to Trump. What they care about is eggs and gas prices. And this dock strike is exactly reflective
to the price
of the price of what things cost on the shelf. So if the last 30 or 40 days going into election, all the prices start to rise,
skyrocket.
This is going to just...
Because they already had the natural disasters that are still going on and that have ravaged, a bunch of different
Trump's
states.
going out there.
Yeah.
Biden and Harris are nowhere to be found.
Harris was at a podcast talking about,
a podcast that's not. She needs to be on the ground, and people are trying to say.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
people are trying to say Donald Trump is trying to use this for political sway. This is a chance to see what your leader is going to do in a time of disaster, and Donald Trump's on the ground.
And even if it is for political sway, at least he is there and he's trying to help and
That's
donating and doing.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy.
The current administration is at the beach probably, and the other ones, off who knows where in her mind, the deep recesses of the small mind that she has. That's going to be a disaster. It's going to be fun to see what happens. I feel sorry for all the people that have to go into this election like this, especially if it happens. And yes, he can stall the strike for 80 days, but what happens after? Could they be bluffing? Sure. Could he be bluffing as well? Sure.
Well, I just see everything that Kamala Harris could have done to actually be president has just fallen apart in her face. And she's the one that had control over all of this. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It was about a month ago. I said the 3 things she had to do.
Yes.
And the first one was she had to take office, meaning she had to get Biden to resign. Mm-hmm. Then she had to negotiate a peace in Ukraine. Even if it required giving Russia a good deal, she just needed a peace in Ukraine. And then she needed to get a secondary peace in the Middle East with the Israelis, even if it was just a temporary ceasefire, and she's going to let them go back to war after the election. Mm-hmm. If she did those 3 things, she would have been in good shape. Even if she does those 3 things now, it's not going to matter because the economy's falling apart. This port strike, these disasters in Georgia are just highlighting the disasters of the Biden administration that happened in Hawaii.
And the disasters of her own interviews as well, of her speaking.
And Price is just going, I don't know what she can do at this point. It's almost like they're trying to hand a 50-state landslide to Trump. Yeah. And that's almost what I'm expecting to see here.
Yeah, unless, in an October surprise, they managed to fully get rid of him, which I hope not.
The only October surprise to get rid of him would be an assassination.
That's what I'm saying. That's the only way to do it. Didn't want to say the A word for YouTube.
They could have the worst, horrible video come out and people would just say, oh, that's probably a deep fake, or even if it's real, Trump's the better choice. The only way to get rid of him is an assassination. And even if they do, they're in such a bad situation because they have J.D. Vance, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. They have all these populists ready to step up, come in, and just take populist control over the government. And they'll have so much backing on the back of the assassination of Donald Trump, if that did happen, they could push almost any policy they wanted through. And we're not talking about Nikki Haley wartime policies. We're going to war with Iran. No, we're talking about disassembling the government and disassembling the FBI specifically and rebuilding it in the vision of the people themselves.
Hopefully. I mean,
Yeah.
politicians can always say things and then never do it.
But thanks for tuning in today.
Yes,
It's every
thank
day
you.
at 4 p.m. West Coast and 7 p.m. East Coast time. That's Nat and the Guy Live. I also have a morning show by myself that goes on 10 a.m. West Coast time and 1 p.m. East Coast time.
Y yo estoy trabajando en videos en español. Sigo tratando de terminar de editarlos, pero ya van a salir pronto. So wait for those if you speak Spanish.
Adios.
Have a great rest of your day.